So if you're like me, you've probably been getting notifications all day long about price reductions on your phone. And are you wondering, is now a good time to buy a house? On today's video, we're going to talk about the current market situation with real estate, the abundance of real estate that's hitting the market, the price reductions, and of course the fact that nothing is selling, but every day there's more inventory. Without a doubt, if you're buying a house, it's probably because you need one. The right time to buy a house would be the time that you need one. If you don't need a house, then why are you buying one? Of course, there's these things called investors, people who buy properties just so that they can make more money. People who think that if they buy at a certain time and sell at another, there's huge profits to be made in real estate. And this is why so many people in the United States are losing their minds, ending up homeless, and others have to work 3 jobs just to have a place to live, because people who have money have decided that they're going to hoard places to live so that the rest of us in society can be enslaved to them. You could have used your money to enjoy it and make a better life for yourself and your family, but you decided to use your money to make life more difficult for other people by acquiring a house that you actually don't need so you can extort other people into giving you their money. As we know, homes are assets, and if you have wealth, you can obtain assets. There's nothing wrong with owning properties. There's nothing wrong with renting properties. The issue is that lately too many people bought houses with the notion that if they and people who thought like them that had money continue to do the same thing, eventually the value of these homes would increase, and the rest of people in society would just have to give them their money for a very limited supply of houses available. But there's something called fluctuations in the markets, corrections, and now things are being corrected, if you could say, with real estate prices decreasing and, of course, prices coming down. Does this mean that the current situation is an opportunity for you to make a come up? Or does your family actually need a home and a place to live? Are you able to afford the place to live that you and your family are going to sign up for the next 30 years, typically in the United States? Can you imagine that? You're buying a home and you're pretty much certain you're going to need it for the next 30 years. That's a lot of thinking forward. Many people say that owning a home is the key to wealth and success, status symbol of the American dream, and of course, people who are renting are throwing away their money. Well, I've owned houses and I've rented houses, and I can tell you that you're throwing your money away either way, because if you don't have a place to live, you're practically homeless. And as far as I'm concerned, there doesn't seem to be a place to live in the United States that's free. So you're paying either way. How much you're paying is going to depend on how much money you got, and then it's going to be taxed based on that amount. Most normal situations are going to call for your tax bill to be about the same as the size of your house. So if you buy a big house, you're going to pay a lot of taxes for it. If we go back a few years, everybody wanted real estate. Overnight, people from New York became investors, real estate investors with cash money, making 20 offers, all cash on a house, to see who would get the biggest ticket out the door. That's what we thought for the most part. But the reality is that these houses weren't getting 20 cash offers. Many times you would go to a realtor and say, hey, I'm interested in buying this house right here, buddy. How much is this particular house going to cost me? And they'd say, well, we need to make a cash offer because we got 10 cash offers already, and only the highest cash offer will be accepted. What many people didn't know is that there really weren't 10 cash offers. In fact, I saw houses where I called the realtor and I actually had the money cash ready to buy the house. The realtors told me that they had 10 or 3 or 4 cash offers. New Yorkers ready to buy these houses cash on the spot. Many months down the road, we figured out that those buyers never existed, and it was just a realtor trying to make you offer a crapload more money than what the house was worth. Could there have been houses out there where there really were several cash offers for it? I'm sure there were, but many of these realtors were actually lying, deceiving people, trying to blow up a balloon as much as they could, and the actual real buyers that actually had money, like myself, were not able to buy these houses because the realtors were trying to squeeze an extra $30,000 or $40,000 out of these sales, fictitious offers that never existed. In other words, people blew up a balloon and there's nothing but air inside. It's interesting to see how just a few years ago the crave was to buy and buy and buy cash and offer more than it was worth. But now, a few years down the road, and it seems like the complete opposite is happening. And 2 or 3 years from now, it could be the same scenario, it could be even lower, or it could be another balloon where everybody's trying to buy again. So there's ups and there's downs, and there's no telling if in a year or two things will be going in either direction. So why are people so interested in if the timing is right to buy or to sell? I mean, obviously the people that a few years ago thought it was time to buy, today think it's time to sell. And many times some of the people that were buying or selling, it's people that are making very short decisions. The problem is that for the average working class person, the decision to buy a home is a 30-year decision. But for people who have money, in just a tenth of that time, they're deciding whether they're going to let go of these properties or if they're going to put all in and buy them. I mean, without a doubt, the only reason you should be buying a house is because you need it as an investment, as an asset, or as a place to lay your head at night. So if you've come to the decision that you need a house, is this the time to get it? Well, let's try to understand why things are going downwards today. I mean, we knew why things went up, right? At least here in the state of Florida, a lot of people left high income areas. See, these cities like San Francisco and New York had really good incomes. But for a minute there, the cost of housing stopped making sense with the coronavirus. Of course, yes, you have this area that has great paying jobs, but if you can't show up to work, you still have to make the payment on that very expensive New York City or San Francisco home. And as people started to zoom in for work, real estate prices started zooming like boozy to new levels that had never been seen before, faster than ever. People wanted real estate in smaller, more affordable places. The notion was that you could have a San Francisco or New York City salary, but you couldn't do it paying those prices. Went to a place like Arkansas or Florida or Texas, you could continue making the salaries that you were making back home in the big cities like New York and San Francisco, but you would be paying a fraction of the price by working remotely. Of course, all that fell through. When people were just wearing a suit from the top up and from the bottom down, there's practically nothing. Others were on vacations, enjoying their best life in the Bahamas and the Curacao Islands, forgetting the fact that they're supposed to be paying attention during those meetings, not drinking a margarita. Young professionals discovered that they could continue getting salaries as if they were working by looking at a computer screen, distorting the background a little bit. The bosses might have thought you were at home working, busy, preparing projects, but you were actually off on vacation with your high school friends and just checking in for the meetings as if you were actually working. Of course, everybody caught on to that, and it became very apparent that productivity with remote workers wasn't going to cut it for big corporations. So as people returned back to the big cities and got their jobs back, we started to realize that perhaps there really was an inherent long-term value with real estate values in big cities, and that perhaps that there's really nothing in Arkansas for you. And even as people got comfortable with big city salaries and low cost of living in rural communities, people went on to discover that things like healthcare, education, and safety were not as proficient in Arkansas, Florida, and other decrepit places like they were in New Jersey or Massachusetts. In other words, when people actually started to settle down in these communities, they discovered the truth that we all knew who study analytics. For example, the state of Florida became the fastest growing state in the country. But the state of Florida also has the worst paid teachers in the United States out of all 50 states. The state of Florida also has the worst paid police officers of all 50 states. And when it comes to healthcare, well, Florida's at the bottom as well. Usually when it comes to professionals, you kind of get what you pay for. A good example, Naples, Florida, where the average home is still worth over $700,000, but a position as a school nurse, a position that you have to go to school for, right? He's paying $13 an hour. Can you imagine that? Spending $20,000, $30,000 in schooling to make $13 an hour? I mean, you could have literally just dropped out of high school and got a job at McDonald's paying more. But this is the reality right now of the state of Florida, where teachers, police officers, people in schools, people in healthcare aren't even making enough money to live. In fact, people with mediocre jobs at a McDonald's drive-thru or Uber driving are making more money than them. To elaborate on the state of Florida, not only was the salary absolutely abysmal, but the cost of living fairly competitive, particularly housing, public services here in the state of Florida. Of course, when you pay the lowest salaries, you're going to get the worst services. When it comes to infrastructure, the state of Florida isn't looking that great. Now, over the last 2 years, infrastructure in Florida has been improving, but let's not forget it's far behind other states like Texas, New York, or California. With most of the largest, fastest growing communities in Florida being unincorporated areas. So where was most of the growth in Florida? The outskirts of Fort Myers, places like Lehigh Acres or unincorporated Lee County, where many people don't even have access to city sewage. They're on septic tank. Many others don't have city water. They are on well water. In other words, despite the fact that numbers of people were moving here, growth seemed tremendous, there was no infrastructure. Everything here was built half-assed. And perhaps the most bizarre thing were areas like Lehigh Acres or Northport, Florida, where we saw entire communities grow, hundreds of thousands of people moving to these places, but nothing but single-family homes. No schools, no commerce, no gas stations, no corner stores, no nothing. Just nothing but hundreds and hundreds of single-family homes being built. What are these communities going to be? I mean, places like Lehigh and Northport are exemplary in determining why the crap things didn't work out in Florida. And I was one of those YouTubers telling you that you can't have a community based on nothing but single family homes. And that is what there is in abundance of today. Too many single family homes in areas that have absolutely nothing to offer. No infrastructure. Now we saw the growth of a lot of larger gated communities. They have better infrastructure, but you're still talking about places that don't even have much more than a gas station and maybe a Publix. And in some places, they built single-family homes in areas that didn't even have that. Now, a lot can be said of a place like Northport today, where you're starting to see more restaurants, more stores, more shopping, and a little bit more of a diversified community when it comes to services, things you can buy, places to eat, things to do. They're starting to look like cities now. But there's one factor. 40,000 brand new single family homes with no malls, no jobs, no restaurants, no infrastructure, and nothing to do isn't a community. It's a freaking horrific real estate bubble. Because even if you did buy the houses, one, you would have access to literally no utilities and services or nothing practical for the most part. But then two, well, how the crap are you going to pay for it in a place that's nothing more but a barren wasteland of single family homes with other people who are also struggling to pay their rent because, well, they also can't find a job. When I say rent, I'm also referring to mortgages because as far as I'm concerned, you're as likely to get kicked out if you don't pay the rent as it is if you don't pay the mortgage. It's kind of the same idea. I mean, you're signing up for 30 years. If you don't pay, I guess the person who's renting didn't have a down payment. Nor did he have to mow the lawn or replace the roof when a hurricane came. And then another year later, another hurricane came. And then your insurance company takes a year before they send you a check. And then another hurricane comes before the end of that year. And now you don't know who the crap you're suing or why. You just know that you've been hit by hurricanes. And now you don't even know what damage which hurricane was it? Now, you got hit by 3 hurricanes last year. Which one of them made your roof leak? I don't know. And neither does the insurance company, who is now going to take 3 years trying to figure that out. Some people are now paying more for their, their insurance than they are for their, what's the other thing? the mortgage. So when it costs more to insure a property than it does to actually pay for it, yeah, that doesn't seem like a very logical conclusion for somebody that's signing up for a 30-year contract. It's almost like if the insurance company and the bank that's giving you the loan for the house were the same people and they both decided, let's just milk this guy as much as we can. Because are they the same people? I mean, they're both milking the life out of you for the same thing, your freaking house. The point being is that inherently there has to be a value to a community. Let's take the Sarasota metropolitan area where I currently live. Here in the Bradensoda area, you have different landscapes. We have islands with condos, islands with mansions, you've got some beaches, you've got some downtown areas, you've got some rundown commercial districts, you've got some poor neighborhoods where we house our students and workers, you've got some middle class neighborhoods where most people want to live, and then in the outskirts you've got some suburbs. Somewhere in there there's a downtown, somewhere in there there's a beach, somewhere in there there's a hospital. People are going to have to work at the hospital, so inherently real estate near a newer hospital is going to have some good value to it. There's going to be some type of real estate application, for example, for student housing. If there's a university or college in the area, and there's quite a few, well then the housing in those vicinities during the times of the year when students are living there would have to have some type of inherent value, and probably not much when they're not there. That means there's a fluctuation, or that the real estate prices only represent, well, demand during part of the year, not during the entire year. So the Sarasota area has some beaches, it has an airport, it has a downtown, and it's in a place with warm weather. So perhaps during the winter, the airport, the beaches, the downtown are going to attract people from other places. But perhaps now in July, when it's 105 degrees and it's nice up there in Michigan, most people are not traveling to Florida for a vacation. They're traveling to Michigan where it's nice and beautiful. So the value of Sarasota is a partial value. It isn't a complete value because, well, there's not too much reason to be here, let's say, right now in the summer. We got the feared hurricane season. Who the crap wants to make plans in Florida during hurricane season, right? You book your hotel stay by the water. Oh, yeah, there's going to be a hurricane. Never mind. That's the type of thing people aren't trying to sign up for. So with uncomfortably hot weather, hurricane season, and of course the fact that there's better places to be during this time of year, that kind of constrains the value of Sarasota's real estate to peak times of the year. Like, for example, the winter time when it's freezing cold in the rest of the country, but it's fairly nice here in the southern part of Florida. All that equates to one thing, that anybody who has real estate in Sarasota, on the beach, the most exclusive parts of Sarasota, there's going to be a very wealthy elite group of people who's going to want to have a home in Sarasota, even if it's only during the winter time. So somebody in New York City will pay $10 million to have a house in Sarasota that's on the sandy beaches of the Gulf Coast, because they know that in December, when it's freezing cold in New York, they can come down to Florida. So the value of the real estate on the water has nothing to do with the job market in Sarasota. It has nothing to do with the services. And of course, these people don't give a crap about the schools because they don't have kids going to school here. I think they care about is a warm place to spend a couple of months during the winter. And that means that if there's enough rich people that want that, real estate in Sarasota is going to be worth a lot. But if you go a little bit further south into Naples, where it's even warmer during the winter, somebody might want to pay $100 million for the most exclusive piece of sand down there, so that during 2 months of the year he can be there and enjoy warm beaches while everybody else is freezing. In fact, if you were to buy property, let's say way at the bottom by Naples, yeah, you're going to pay a good $100 million, but December 25th, you could be swimming in the Gulf of Mexico. Perhaps in Sarasota, where we are right now, 100 miles further north, it might just be a little bit too cold to do that. May not make a lot of sense to you, but that 3-degree difference in water temperature makes a difference between $10 million and $100 million. But of course, it doesn't make sense to you because you can't afford either one. But to somebody who can afford both, they're going to pay the one in Naples. And that's really where the inherent value of real estate can be understood. What price point are you at? How much money you got? And what are you trying to do with your money when it comes to real estate? For some people, being in South Florida when it's freezing everywhere else is the only thing there is to do. And I mean, if you think about the future of the United States, with the current changes that are happening, a lot of wealthy people are perhaps not going to be traveling to other countries. That could mean that possibly the elitist people are going to realize that perhaps in December they're not going to be able to go to the Bahamas or St. Lucia. They're going to have to stay in the United States, which means that places like San Diego or Naples, Florida could be very attractive to have. A very expensive piece of real estate because it's nice, warm, good, decent weather. And it's in the United States. So it's just, which way is it going to go? So for many of us, the current economical situation doesn't dictate anything like that. So while the extraordinarily wealthy people are busy in downtown Sarasota enjoying the city right now, this is what the commuter routes look like on a Monday during rush hour. There's practically nobody commuting through Sarasota right now. So what's that mean? Well, the wealthy guy buying the beach home, he's going to be all right. He's going to continue buying beach homes. But if you look at this right here, this is downtown Sarasota heading north on 301. This should be a very busy road with commuters, but why isn't nobody here at 3:30 or 4 in the afternoon on a Monday? This should be a traffic jam bumper to bumper. Well, the reason is because you're not in that price bracket. You're in a different price bracket. You're in a price bracket where people are contending with different economical situations. And it's really important to understand that when it comes to real estate, different price brackets act differently. So while in Lehigh Acres, Cape Coral, and Northport, there's price reductions and people trying to bail the crap out. Now this here's MLK Drive. It's not a bad part of the city. It's close to the airport, close to downtown. But the scenario here on MLK is a little different. It's a little bit more run down, and the people that live here are not buying mansions. People that live here are contending with the fact that many of their residents who are undocumented are now leaving the United States. That means that many people are going to have to put up for rent signs. That means that real estate prices here are going to really lag behind, since after all, if people move out in mass from a community, you're leaving behind a huge void. A huge void that is not going to get filled by anybody because most people would do anything to stay out of poor, dangerous neighborhoods. So while on one side of the city things may be normal in one price bracket, there can definitely be a lot of concern in another price bracket. The truth is that many people are hurting. Without a doubt, the people that moved into the suburban areas and bought in neighborhoods that had nothing but single-family homes far away from schools, fire departments, hospitals, grocery stores, they are in trouble because now there's a huge economic downturn for many of the sectors in the economy that affect them the most. So anybody that has a rental property in one of these more rundown neighborhoods where undocumented people were renting, they got a problem on their hands because everybody who had those types of properties is losing their tenants. On top of that, there's a huge supply. There's very little demand for this type of housing. And there's a lot of people who are going to have to, just sit there with houses they can't rent. So for that segment of the economy right there, those people are going to struggle to move that real estate, to rent it, to sell it, to do anything. But if you believe that there's an inherent value where these properties are, close to universities perhaps, close to schools, close to hospitals, close to airports, you may decide that the value of these properties now isn't really related to the undocumented people that were working in restaurants that are now closing, of course, because they have neither customers nor workers. So it's about understanding inherently who is the customer, who is the buyer. If you're buying real estate here in Sarasota, is there going to be a demand for real estate in Sarasota? Well, we understand what's happening with immigration. There's no need to elaborate on that. People are leaving behind large areas of the city vacant. Now, if it overlaps with a school area where people are renting houses for schools, there's a partial demand for these properties, but there isn't a full-time demand for these properties since, well, it seems like there's an abundance of places to live in the Sarasota area. And that means that regular working class people may not have any incentive to move into these neighborhoods right here. So you just have to understand that somewhere out there is a demand. Why is there a demand? Because of infrastructure, hospitals, highways, airports, beaches. For one reason or another, there's going to be some type of demand for some of the landscape of Sarasota. Somebody will list a house in Lakewood Ranch and it will go fairly quickly because there's a demand for it close to a school, close to a hospital. Somebody's going to see that property and say, yeah, that's convenient for me. But unfortunately for other people, they're going to list a property for sale and the insurance companies aren't going to want it, the banks aren't going to want to finance it, and the tenants aren't going to want to rent it for any reason. So when you look at real estate, yeah, there's this huge abundance of properties out there. Supply is plentiful. Prices are dropping. But it's going to depend on what property you have and where it's at. So the trick about Florida wasn't knowing to buy, but where to buy and why. Somebody from Florida like myself would have known a long time ago where to buy and why to buy, not just to buy. So a lot of people, let's say New Yorkers, were very smart. They know where to buy, why to buy, and the properties that they bought are still useful to them today. But unfortunately, for all those that knew it was time to buy, but they didn't know why or where, they're in trouble. And they were plentiful. The amount of people that bought houses in suburbs with no infrastructure, with no general application, just house after house after house, there's no jobs there. Now, I could have told you that, and I did tell you that when I was making YouTube videos telling you guys, this is not the type of place you want to end up in Florida. A lot of people laughed at me. Despite the fact that right now in the Sarasota metro area, the supply is unreal. The amount of price reductions are unethical. If you have an apartment complex across the street from a hospital in Lakewood Ranch, you're not dropping your prices, you're actually raising them because the demand is higher than the supply. And if you just happen to be close enough to a university or a school, then now you have doctors, nurses, and now you also have students. And some of those students are studying to be doctors and nurses, which means that the demand continues to be there for that particular type of real estate. So when you look at the Sarasota area right now, there are particular categories of real estate, like rental properties adjacent to those types of facilities. The prices aren't going down. They're actually going up because there's not enough supply to meet the demand for those types of properties, namely luxury apartments near particular types of infrastructure. They're not having any trouble renting those. Now, real estate appreciation doesn't happen everywhere. You can have price increase, but a price increase is not a price appreciation. And you're probably scratching your head wondering, what the crap did I just say? For example, in Lehigh Acres, prices increased, but along the beach, they appreciated because there's only so many pieces of sand you can buy, and only so many of them are residential. So if you're looking to buy a piece of sand in Sarasota, well, they're not making any more new beaches in Sarasota. They can make new suburbs. They can go start making suburbs, and eventually they'll end up in Arcadia making suburbs. There's always a swamp that can be filled in to make a new suburb, but there's no beaches being created. That means that if you're looking at places like a piece of land, like sand along the beach, it's appreciating because there's only so much of it. Now, it could go up, it could go down. A house on the beach could be worth $8 million or it could be worth $3 million. The point is that if somebody wants that particular type of property, like there's only 800 of them in the particular area that exist here. I mean, really the real issue at hand here is that you can make Lakewood Ranch bigger, but you can't make Lido Key be any bigger. Now, demand for Lido Key can fluctuate, but the supply can't. There's only so much of it. And this is kind of where people just don't understand where to buy real estate or why. See, somebody who's actually looking at a long-term investment isn't going to buy a 5-bedroom, 3-bath house in Lakewood Ranch, because there's going to be a new Lakewood Ranch 10 miles down the road. There's not going to be another Lido Key. A 2-bedroom, 1-bath house here, it's still here. There's only so much of it. And even if it floods, the value has nothing to do with the actual structure. The value has to do with the land underneath it that still remains by the beach. It's understanding the inherent value of real estate in the long term. See, we all know if it's time to buy or time to sell. It really doesn't take too much to figure that out. It's either time to buy or time to sell. That's the easy part to figure out. Now, there's entire YouTube channels on understanding that, but there's nothing to be understood about that. Entire guys have made their YouTube channels about nothing but knowing whether to buy or sell. A completely pointless aspect. It's not hard to know if it's time to buy or sell. That's easy. It's not hard to know when it's time to buy or sell. Like I said, these guys have made entire YouTube channels about knowing when to buy or sell. But there's nothing. I mean, I haven't been looking at real estate for a while, but I know it's time to sell right now. How you can make videos about that? Sure, you could. I mean, you could make a video about why you should have your windshield wipers on when it's raining. But if it's not raining, I'm sure most of us understand that the windshield wipers are not needed on a sunny day. Let me give you a good example. A while back, I was at a Walmart, and I found a bottle of de-icer for 36 cents. And I thought to myself, wow, I am sure that it probably cost 70 cents to manufacture this. This is the time to buy this bottle of de-icer because it's on clearance. The original price was $8.99 and I could get it for 37 cents. You know what the problem was? It was at a Walmart in Naples, Florida during July when it was 96 degrees outside, and despite the fact that the price was incredible, there's no ice in Naples. So the point being is that it doesn't matter how affordable real estate becomes. If there's no demand for it, nobody's going to buy it. Now, supply and demand are very common features. We've all heard the term supply and demand. But think a little bit about the word demand. When you walk into a restaurant, you don't demand that they make you your dinner. You request that they make you something different. But if you have a receipt and they haven't sent it to you yet, you've already paid for it, you want it, now it's a demand. Like, I demand that you bring me my food out. I've been waiting for 2 hours. Now it's not, when you say the word demand, they're used so common, like they're interchangeably used. Words supply and demand are used so interchangeably with other terms that we forget that the word demand means that there's a demand. Somebody needs this crap right now. And a lot of people just say, well, supply and demand, or the people need it. No, demand means you don't kind of want something. You kind of need it right freaking now. Like a doctor who's just got a job. Like a student that needs to study out of school. They don't kind of want this real estate. They kind of freaking need it. Now think about New York City or Houston, Texas. The downtown of New York City will probably be the downtown of New York City for a long time. The downtown of Houston, Texas will probably be the downtown of Houston, Texas for a very long freaking time. But then you look at Northport, Florida. If it's ever going to get a downtown, is it going to be close to the water? Is it going to be in the outskirts? Is it going to be somewhere in the middle? There's no real telling where the crap it's going to be. So there's not really, you can't really pinpoint that somewhere. Lehigh Acres, Florida, it's growing. It looks like the center of Lehigh Acres could be, well, like, you know, like off of this in the geographic center of the city, but maybe there's going to be more growth towards Gateway, and maybe that area one day will be it. Or like Lehigh Acres compared to Hialeah. Hialeah, Florida doesn't have a downtown. The southeast corner of Hialeah, it's a bit more expensive. It's a little bit more high population density because it's the closest to Miami. But at the end of the day, Hialeah doesn't have a downtown. It's just one kind of evenly spaced out giant gridlock of residential streets. So when you look at inherent value of real estate, where's something going to be worth tomorrow? For example, look at these properties right here. They used to be houses, but now they're all businesses. In fact, if you went on Google today, this little restaurant right here, the little yellow building, it says this is the restaurant that everybody in Florida is going to. It's a secret spot everybody's going to. But that's what some magazine on Google said today. I was laughing because I drive past that restaurant every day, and I didn't even know it was a restaurant. Never seen cars outside, never seen people lined up. But right now, Google recommended me that restaurant, saying the spot in Florida everybody's going to. Interestingly enough, I've never even seen a freaking car in the parking lot. I mean, look at these buildings. There used to be houses. Now they're law offices and restaurants, or who knows what the crap they are, because inherently there's no value to it. Why isn't there value to it as a house? Well, because if you look across the street, it's becoming very obvious what the long-term value of that place is going to be. It's going to be a footprint for a big, giant skyscraper. And there's no telling if it's going to happen tomorrow, 5 years from now, or 20 years from now. But inherently, the value of that house right there, it's never going to be a residential home for a family, because looming in the background are these type of constructions here. It's very obvious that eventually those little houses are not going to be places for somebody to live. It might have been a place for somebody to live in the 1940s, but today, yeah, they got little cranes and booms that are, knocking down all those little houses. So what's the value of that? Does it make sense for somebody to live there? There could be one of those that's a rental property, but is that really what it is? No. It's just waiting to be rezoned into something else. But if you think about it from a utilitarian standpoint, it is a house. It does look like a house, and it is a house, and it was a house. Why isn't somebody buying that to live? Well, because of where it is. Its practical application where it's at right now is better suited to be a law office. The amount of traffic that passes on that road, Fruitville Road, 3 lanes of traffic, dump trucks, semi-trucks, police sirens, ambulance sirens, car crashes, homeless people. There's a lot going on there. Nobody is going to want to live in a house on Fruitville Road. There's just too much going on there. Maybe a little bit further back where it's more quiet, somebody will. But then it's a house, but it's not being used as a house. But see, that's the difference between a house in downtown Sarasota versus a house in Lehigh Acres. The house in Lehigh Acres couldn't possibly be a law office because, well, there's no practical application for that. So, sometimes a house in Sarasota can be used as a law office. It can be used as a restaurant. I mean, that's what's going on right there. That's a lot of practical application. So, when you look at the value of a house in Sarasota, it might be worth more than a house in Lehigh Acres. So, you wonder, so I can buy this old house in Sarasota for $500,000 or $600,000, or I could buy this house in Lehigh Acres that's much bigger and newer, and it's a fraction of the cost. What are you going to do with that house? I mean, now you bought a house in Lehigh Acres. You can't find tenants for it. You can't find somebody to cut the grass. I mean, let's talk about what it actually entitles to own a house in Lehigh Acres today. The houses that people were fighting for 3 or 4 years ago, right? Student housing. Nope, it's too far. And there's many other closer options and more affordable. That doesn't work. Are there any hospitals nearby? No, there's no hospitals nearby, so you don't have nurses. You don't have patients either. You have retired people that might want to buy the house, but another problem is that there's 800 other houses before they get to yours, so that's not going to happen. So let's think here for a minute. Now, let's say you need somebody to cut your grass. Oh, he got deported. Okay. Let's say a hurricane comes and blows your roof off. Well, that guy got deported too, so who's going to climb on your roof now? You see, now you bought a house that has no practical application. It's in the middle of nowhere. It has no infrastructure. You can't get somebody to mow the lawn. You can't get somebody to fix the roof. Now it doesn't actually make you money. It costs you money. Your asset just became a liability because of insurance reasons, because of, the fact that you can't maintain the property now. Now, if you have a 300 apartment complex, one of these big apartment complexes we have here in Sarasota, you got 300 of them, You can hire a guy, a full-time job, and this guy's job is to cut the trees, and you can hire a guy to be a maintenance guy. And now you don't have to worry about getting the grass cut because you've got a position to fill where he's got to cut the grass for a whole community. He's a maintenance guy. He cuts the grass, he fixes the sink, he does everything. Now with a community that big, with 300 units, like these new luxury apartment complexes, for example, I guess in that scenario, you don't really have to worry too much about the maintenance because you've hired a guy for that purpose. That's what you call diversifying your tenants. You have a diverse amount of people that need your property. But the property in Lehigh Acres doesn't have a diverse amount of people. There just aren't doctors moving there. Perhaps a doctor could buy your house to commute, but then he would have 800 other options. So what are the chances he's going to buy yours? Unless you reduce the price to be more competitive. Now you're not making any money. See, that's what it all comes down to. So if you're going to buy real estate right now, just ask yourself, is there a job nearby? Do I need this property? Well, how am I going to use this property? How could somebody else use this property? Because right now, really, there isn't a lot of use for a lot of these properties. They don't have a purpose. And both people who own real estate are going to be suffering. A lot of people are having to leave the country and they own real estate, so they're going to have to continue to dump their real estate because pretty soon people from other countries probably aren't going to be allowed to own real estate here. That's the way it's looking for one reason or another, or whatever. At some point, people, if you're not a U.S. citizen, you're probably not going to be able to buy real estate eventually. There's still a lot of people from other countries who own real estate here, and they haven't figured out what time it is. So yeah, demand for real, and then it's not just houses, it's also commercial buildings. So a lot of restaurants are going to fail, right? A lot of businesses are going to fail. Without diving into immigration in depth, just, superficially, a lot of people are going to lose their businesses. A lot of people are going to lose their tenants. Restaurants are going to have to close. Shopping malls are going to have to close. A lot of things are going to fail because you have neither workers or customers. That's a logical conclusion. But how is it going to affect the hotel by the beach? They got 300 rooms. They're going to find somebody to do it. Now, that all equates to what? A temporary problem or a permanent problem? Because that's the thing. Like, some problems are permanent. An example would be if an area just inherently always floods, it's a flood zone. If an area is coastal, it's always going to be coastal. There's always going to be the threat of a hurricane. Then you have things that are created. You have new problems that arise. For example, crime can be in one part of the city, tomorrow can be in another. Demand, all these things can fluctuate. Some things fluctuate more than others. Some things are fixed. Some areas are just really low risk. For example, Lakewood Ranch has good elevation. Did some people's houses recently flood in Lakewood Ranch? Yes, they did. Is Lakewood Ranch going to flood as much as Cape Coral or Lehigh Acres? Never. Is it ever going to be hit by a storm surge? Some parts are 30 feet above sea level. So, no, it isn't. There's so much that people need to learn about real estate, and they don't learn it. People speculate, and they buy, and they watch videos about when to buy and when to sell, and the top 10 fastest growing cities. If you buy the right type of real estate in the right type of place, sure, the timing could determine if the price is going to vary, how much it's going to vary by. Yeah, there's fluctuations, and then there's permanently fixed things. For example, for the most part, Naples, Florida is always going to be warmer than most of the country. It would take a lot for that to fluctuate. So, boom, there's some value in that. At some point, Sarasota's going to get hit by a hurricane. Hey, they went 100 years without a hurricane, but then they had 2 in a row. So, at some point, that takes away value from the property. And you can go on and on. Schools. Okay, there's schools here, but they're building newer, better ones in Lakewood Ranch. So, are the schools in Sarasota going to be better? Well, if they have a better salary because they have a better tax base, then even though the buildings might be older, right? And it could be a building from the 1940s, but because it's a better funded school system, they're going to pay their teachers better and have better teachers, better curriculums. Perhaps it would still have more value as a school district, even though the infrastructure of the buildings is older. And these variables can change from place to place. For example, Louisville, Kentucky is a huge airport and transportation hub. It's a highway network. It's an airplane network, a cargo shipping network. That's the value of that area. It's affordable. Land in Kentucky is plentiful. There's places to grow. But here in Florida, you got water. There's only so many places to go. You got warm weather. There's always people that are going to want to be down here. All these things are going to determine the value of a place. But then there's places with good jobs. For example, port cities, San Francisco, New York, Washington, D.C., Baltimore. All these cities have something that's fixed, permanent, valuable, that adds inherent value to those cities. San Francisco, let's look at San Francisco real quick. For one, it is beautiful. It's got good weather. It does have some local risk, like let's say earthquakes, but it's a port city connecting the United States to Asia. That's always going to be a trade route that's going to exist. Could something destroy that trade route? Sure, something could get in the way of that, but then that just takes away value from that city. But in theory, San Francisco, with a big, deep port looking out to Asia, is always going to be the gateway to that part of the world. So as long as trade exists with that part of the world, San Francisco is going to be valuable. New York and the Eastern Seaboard, port cities looking towards Europe. As long as trade with Europe exists, those cities are going to have some inherent value that's going to be more meaningful than, let's say, Florida, because it's far more impractical. If trade with Latin America all of a sudden became important, perhaps a place like New Orleans could have some value, or Jacksonville, Florida. But those places don't have any value. So why is Baltimore and San Francisco more valuable than perhaps Latin America? Well, let's think for a minute. There's land routes. It isn't that far. The things that are coming from Latin America are perishable because it's easier to ship them. You can't do the same thing with something coming from halfway around the world or from Europe or Asia. So you have to understand inherently what the value of a place is based on its location as well. And that's on a global level, but it's also on a microscopic level. And if you look at China, right, halfway around the world, their fastest growing cities also happen to be port cities. Why? Because China also depends on trade. You know, people think China and the United States are two completely different countries, and they're not. China and the United States are laid out exactly the same. All of the cities with skyscrapers and big businesses and ports are along their eastern seaboard because it's facing the ocean trade routes. So the United States and China are laid out exactly the same way. These are just geographical barriers that all represent value. May it be global trade, may it be farming applications, all that just kind of is already in place. So if you know how to read, you should be able to decipher what value a place has. For example, the same reason San Francisco and New York City are valuable is the same reason why along China's coastline you have all of its most productive cities. You don't have those productive cities all the way up in Mount Everest because there's nothing to make money from there. There's no trade up there. The trade is along the water, the ocean. So same thing here. You just have to understand how to read the value of the land and you'll know what its value is. And that's microscopic, local, but it's also global. Hey, I really appreciate you watching my entire rant on trying to understand the value of real estate in Florida right now. There's all types of price reductions, all types of deals out there, but it all comes down to the demand. Who needs it, why, or who's trying to get rid of it is also a factor. That's the reality of real estate in Florida right now, and I hope you've learned something from today's video about trying to understand why or if you need to be buying a house right now. Obviously, the middle class in suburbia right now is taking a huge hit, and buying a house is a huge long-term commitment, and a lot of people are realizing they just can't afford that with the current economy. And if you can't figure out why that's the case, well, bless your heart. It's pretty obvious. You should know how to read by now. Are these patterns going to continue indefinitely forever? No, at some point there's going to be a correction. There's going to be a stabilization, and people are going to find new adaptations, purposes for their properties. But in the meantime, if people can't figure out what the crap is with these properties, prices are just going to continue the same general pattern of depreciation. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video.